imagine? What have you done? Can you imagine? Anyways, what up, guys? What up, guys? I was just vibing. First, I laughed at myself because I tried to start the video. No, I thought the video was started. My bad. I thought the video was starting because I could see my face on the screen. I was like, oh my gosh, must be recording. No, you dingbat. It is not recording, love. That does not mean recording. You have to press go live. Then it will record. But anyways. Let's, pretty sure we're good if I put it like that. I do not want to get my laptop out because this is kind of just like spur of the moment type. Bruh, this camera be making me look like a ghost. I swear, I'm not even that pale. Like, what the fuck is up with that? Anyways, that's besides the point. Who gives a fuck what I look like? I just hate how inaccurate it is, you know? Like, it feels like I'm not looking at myself versus when I'm seeing myself in other situations, like when I'm just looking in the mirror or reflection type. I'm like, that's not what I even look like. And then I think back to how I look on camera. But anyways, when it comes to the title of the video and the actual topic at hand that I seem to be getting Geministic about and hopping, you know, like a bunny rabbit from topic to topic, word to word. I thought this was an interesting video to talk about, especially because of what's it called? It's relevant to what I'm going through, but it's also just something that I feel like could be incorporated or interpreted for many different things and might just be an interesting discussion in general. Right? So when it comes to why and how, we'll first get into, before I even get into the video, I want to preface this by saying why and how people or society pushes us to make friends with enemies. First of all, I don't want to necessarily push the idea that about enemies in that fully negative light. I'm just talking about people, because at the end of the day, like the way I see it, everyone's doing their own thing, right? And I don't necessarily want to see it as all the time, like just because something doesn't work out, just because your energy doesn't align, doesn't not necessarily mean that you are enemies, right? Sometimes things just don't work well at that point in time, and it may take like certain experiences, or it may be that your energies just don't gel in general at this point. Beyond that, I don't like to go too deep into that anyway. I just like to keep it simple, you know? I just like to keep it at a middle ground. But for the purpose of the topic of the video, when we're talking about enemies, we're just talking in general sense, beings, people, places, things that don't necessarily have our best interests at hand or at heart or at whatever the main driving force or main intention is behind that. So why and how society pushes us to make friends with our enemies goes into a myriad of different ways. But in a simple context, it is the how is probably easier for me to explain first, I would say. The how is due to the fact that, first of all, you're programmed and you're pushed to disconnect from your thoughts and your feelings as a sense of sensing, right? Because if you're aware of what your thoughts and your feelings are, they're a form of your sixth sense, right? It's also a representation of what your mind is like, your internal, but still you're using that sense to either sense what's going on internally or you're sensing what's going on externally. And sometimes what's going on internally may be due to the external of what you're experiencing. So it's all kind of intertwined anyway, right? But you're naturally programmed to think more logical, to think more like masculine like, aka focus more on external things rather than to think too much about what's going on internally. And this is why they don't teach certain things in school more tied to the internal. The closest you'll get to something more internal in school is like is like what's it called? Maybe art or something, because that's more tied to the feminine, but still, all of that's external. You're externalizing something in some way, shape, or form. So it just creates more of you focusing on that specific area rather than to focus on like both and have that balance between the internal and the external, and knowing how to decipher what's going on based on your thoughts and your feelings. But when you're completely disconnected from those and you think that your thoughts and your feelings are something completely separate from the physical, or mostly separate, then you start to disconnect in other ways, right? And then that leads you to not trusting certain things like your intuitions, right? AKA, these chakras that are showing you something else that you're not able to perceive with your physical eyes, right? Because a chakra is like an eye. And so you're perceiving it with one of your chakras, right? But if you don't know how to decipher that based on your thoughts and your feelings, what kind of chakra you might be in, what kind of what's a similar chakra or energy that you may be experiencing and creating with another individual, right? When you're going from person to person, environment, and you're interacting, you're all creating something. This is why when you are around certain people, you have a certain vibe. You may get excited around one person, you may get drained around another person. That's the kind of energy that you guys are cultivating together. So that's not necessarily always their energy, and that's not necessarily always your energy. It's both of them interacting and intertwining that creates the vibe, the atmosphere, aka the environment that you two are experiencing in. Because when you're coming together as two individuals, you're also within your own bubble and your own space. This is why as well you may be with certain people sometimes and you may feel like you can have your own space even while being in the same space as them. So you guys might be cultivating a lot of that energy together, of both being in your own space, of both having privacy, of both having security, safety, like or just feeling like not smothered, basically, because you guys make each other feel free. You guys, the space you guys create, you together, you got, or the environment. Sorry, the space is more about the spirit, right? So you're not necessarily creating spaces. You are the space is what's creating the atmosphere or the environment. But that environment and that atmosphere that you guys are creating is more free, is more flowing, is not restrictive. It's open and expansive, like all of those kind of good energies that we love to have, So we're conditioned to ignore a lot of that, and we're not actually paying attention to what's going on all the time. Obviously, certain people are more in tune with that than others, right? But as a whole, society doesn't necessarily focus on that, not until we get to later generations and it starts to become more commonplace among the actual people. Then society will start to shift. But society itself is generally programmed due to mainstream media, mainstream education, like all of that stuff is prepping your mind, and essentially it's like grooming your mind to think in a way of logical left brain. Think about squares and definition and defining and all of that kind of stuff related to like the left brain, related to externalizing, related to physical everything. So it's very physical focused. I was actually talking about this in my TikTok live yesterday, very similar, right? And how when I was first getting into spirituality as well, even so you can even see this in the spiritual community, right? First getting into like kind of more deeper into my spirituality and learning more about the spiritual aspect of things, which, you know, for lack of a better term, because I don't know if I really necessarily like that term, especially what people are attaching to it these days when it comes to certain concepts like higher self or uh, channeling is what the topic was that got brought up. It was channeling. So channeling, I was like, I don't really see it like that, because whenever I'm doing stuff, like I don't, it doesn't turn on and off for me. It's just something that's always happening. Like, so when I think about channeling, I'm just like, I'd rather be thinking like, okay, I am the channel, because like I don't change, or I don't turn into something else, or I don't like tune into something else. I'm tuning into my own mind and my own perspective, you know, and that's what I've noticed as well. Although I did learn a lot based on other spaces, other minds that I've also paid attention to, aka Dollar Development. Shout out to him. I don't know if I'll probably overdo that whole shouting him out thing, but you know, you just can't do it enough. You can't do it enough. But now I'm starting to think, anyways, that's for me. So, on the topic, it made me think how when you're thinking about it in that perspective, the higher self, also you channeling, because someone was saying you're channeling your higher self. And I was like, I sort of get, like, I know where people are coming from when they say that, but I just don't necessarily agree, because I'm like, what do you mean my higher self? I'm my higher self. Like, it doesn't make sense to me, because like I'm all of those. So for me to think like back in those days, I used to think that my higher self was something separate. So you're already making it separate by saying you're channeling your higher self, you know? So then beyond that, you're looking at it and you're like, oh, actually, that makes no sense. Because how can I channel my higher self? I'm me. Like I'm that. Like I'm not, well, I'm not even that. Like that's not necessarily me. Like this is like an expression, you know, and same with your mind. That's an expression. So then I'm thinking like, okay, well, what would my higher self be? Like the most expanded self I think of like is probably my space, you know, my spirit. But my higher self, that sounds like people might be talking about the mind, which I don't even consider my higher self. At least based on the way people be talking about it, like, and kind of describing what your higher self is. That to me just sounds like my mind. And that is not my higher self. That's just like my lightest self, I guess, because it's a self as in it's an expression, it's an ego, it's a body. But anyways, back to the kind of, you get the idea with what I'm talking about. That it doesn't make sense, and that's where as well, again, in like mainstream media, mainstream education, the way people are raised in society, it starts to become pushing you towards separating yourself from all of that spirit, all of that mental, all of that, like, and then pushing you into your body and helping you to stay physical focused. So all you're focused on is like the body, the physical, what you can see, what you can touch, like all of your physical senses. And then you start to ignore and you start to not pay attention to what your actual like, I don't know if you call them spiritual senses, but I guess, but your thoughts and your feelings, which is your sixth and seventh sense, right? Because we have 5 senses. Your thoughts and your feelings, 6th and 7th sense, or just your 6th sense, because they're kind of one and the same. But yeah, you push yourself away from all of that, and then you start to disconnect from you actually being able to experience reality at the first instance of it. So now you're experiencing everything second in the body, because the body is like the second coming. The mind is like the first coming. That's why you think first before you act majority of the time. Even if you're not thinking about what you're acting, right? You have to think that you want to walk over to the other side of the room. Otherwise, you just won't walk to the other side of the room. You have to be like, oh, I'm gonna walk. Let me go walk to the other side of the room. Even if it's like an afterthought, there's always some kind of thought or feeling that's going into what you're doing. Even if it's just a raw emotion of like just to get up, you're not even thinking about it. In some way, shape, or form, that's first. So that's why the body is the second coming. So when you're fully stuck into the body, you're literally experiencing the second coming only. You're not experiencing like the first instance of things. And that's funny because like I remember Dollar the Parlor Man, he used to talk about that in his videos, right? And I used to like listen, but I wouldn't really listen. I wouldn't really fully get it, but it really is like that. Like I would get it in my own way, and that's the thing. That's the beauty with like real truth that I've noticed. Like when things are real true, I don't know. At least from what I've noticed, I could be wrong. It could be something else. But when I notice things are real truth, right? They become more potent and deeper in meaning as you experience and go over like time and learn and grow. All of that kind of stuff will deepen the meaning, and so you'll start to see how it's actually true on an even deeper level beyond what you had first thought about it. So it's just definitely something to be grateful about, I reckon. I just love that we can actually experience those type of things. But yeah, so we talked about how are people actually programmed and pushed to kind of be friends with their enemies. Well, actually, I kind of didn't explain fully. I just explained the like initial stages, right? Because then all of that develops into you. Now you're ignoring yourself, right? You're ignoring your own internal. And so now you start to ignore your own experiences when they show you things, whether it's internally or externally, right? And so you're not only are you clouded internally because you're not paying attention to something internal, right? Now you're clouding yourself externally because it all ties in. So then you're starting to go out into the world, ignore signs, ignore certain like intuitions, and ignore certain hunches that you get, or a certain feeling or a certain thought that you might get, right? And then you're experiencing and going through experiences, and like now you've like gotten either like someone got over on you, because you didn't pay attention to the signs that you were getting, or like you made a whole bunch of mistakes based on whatever the case may be. But that's pretty much how, you end up getting pushed to be friends more with your enemies and to align more with people that don't necessarily align with you or have their best interests at heart. And it goes into layers and layers, even beyond that. But like, that's the main, for me, at least from what I'm looking at it, that's the main root cause and root factor. And that breathed into many other different factors and causes. But now why? I think based on the video that I was doing, it gets to be pretty obvious about why, right? Why? Is because when people are more in alignment with their enemies and doing things like out of sync, out of alignment, right? Whatever that may look like for each individual, then things start to become easier to control because this person's running around lost. This person's running around lost. These people aren't getting together because now they're focused on other completely different energies. That's not actually helping them to live to their fullest capabilities as an individual and what they could actually achieve. Because everyone's focused on that. Now people are like not only mentally disconnected from, whether it's their culture, whether it's their soul tribe, which kind of ends up being like aligned with their culture in general, right? Which is just to say that they're like-minded individuals, right? You have like-minded individuals around you, then you're going to be a lot more strong, but if you are able to separate and divide each individual and not allow them to live to their best extent, then they're going to end up becoming docile or whatever it may be, but they won't end up pursuing a lot of the things that they could have pursued and that may have been detrimental to the systems that we have in place. All right, so at the end of the day, it's all about manipulation. It's all about them trying to manipulate and control things so that because they're afraid, really. It comes from fear. If you really pay attention to the certain actions and the certain ways they do things, it's out of fear. That's actually fear. They're afraid of what would happen if we were actually in our natural state as spirits, as individuals, because they can only control people. It's like a demon, right? How people say like, or how people say misery likes company, right? Of course they like company because that when they bring you down to their level, then they're able to be in their world. They're the most powerful, right? But if they're trying to bring you down, it's because they see that you're more powerful, right? So when you get pulled down, aka you're stuck in like all of those mind states that I was explaining in the earlier part of the video, then you're in their world, and therefore they have more power, they have more control because it's their world. You know what I mean? Of course, they're going to have more power. Same way, if you're in your world, you're going to have more power, and you're going to be better at what you do because it's within your bounds, within your space, within your world that you create. So just remember that. We don't want to be giving people no credit out here that they don't deserve, because at the end of the day, it's like fear tactics, fear mongering, like manipulation. All of that comes under like insecurity. All of that comes under like incapability. All of that comes under shit that like we don't necessarily need to be giving credit like it's something like extravagant or powerful. Like no, boo. No, boo. Nobu, not the brand. I mean, shout out to them, I guess. I don't even know what Nobu is, but I think that's pretty much the main topics and the way I wanted to explain it. So I will leave it at that, and I will see you guys for the next one. Thank you very much. Master is out. Have a beautiful day, time, wherever you are. Hey.